bringing you up to date on developments in our stories about police cars that kill and the local councils turned undertakers. But first, step aboard a pirate ship. No, not the kind that runs up the Jolly Roger. This one's mast carries a transmitter because it's the pop pirate Radio Laser. It seemed a couple of years ago that she'd sunk without trace. That was after the authorities had moved in. But now Michael Wilson's spyglass has detected something very like the old ship on the horizon off the Essex coast.
Blasting out across the nation, Laser Hot Hits.
That's us. We are Laser Hot Hits. Good afternoon, I am Brandy Lee, 125.
Laser Radio, the pop music pirate which once plundered millions of listeners from Britain's legal radio stations, has sneaked back on the airwaves. Our pirate crew are preparing to raid that audience all over again. 2 years ago, her swashbuckling success enraged the broadcast authorities. Off the Essex coast, she was besieged and finally boarded. The blockade cost the taxpayer an estimated £250,000. Under escort, she sailed into Harwich and was arrested. It looked like a victory for the government. Laser had been silenced. But the expensive seizure turned out to be little more than a commercial break. In the maritime trade paper Lloyd's List, she was put up for sale under the dignified hammer of Her Majesty's Admiralty Marshal. And after the authorities had spent a fortune turning her off, she was sold, radio gear intact, to an Essex businessman at a knockdown price.
I saw it as being a bargain. I saw a ship with a lot of technical equipment on there, possibly worth up to £250,000. And I couldn't see anybody coming along and paying that sort of money for it. So I put in what I considered to be a cheeky bid based on what I could afford. And that was £35,000. And to my surprise, and it was surprise, my bid was the highest.
Mr. Anderson prepared the boat for sea. Then the authorities realised they might have made a blunder. Once out to sea, she'd be out of their control and could become a pirate again. So they immobilised the ship. That turned out to be one of their biggest mistakes. In a gale last autumn, she broke from her moorings and without engines smashed into a Harwich ferry. Laser had become an embarrassment. Mr. Anderson was only too pleased to put his little oar in the nicest possible way, of course.
I sent them a very stiff letter suggesting that they were going to be held responsible for any damage caused by our vessel being immobilised. And then within a few days, they mysteriously turned up again one Friday afternoon and reinstated the engine parts.
Which made the ship fit for sea?
Yes.
So the whole thing had turned into a complete farce. The authorities had red faces. Laser Radio had a newly repaired ship, which gave them an ideal opportunity to slip away to sea. And that's precisely what they did. Neither the Departments of Trade, Transport or the Home Office could stop her steaming away quite legally because Mr. Anderson has said she was bound for Spain with other owners. But according to the author of this book, they should have all known better.
The boat is a radio ship. It's no use for anything else. So anyone bidding for it would either be buying scrap metal to break it up or would be a broadcaster, an illegal broadcaster. They don't seem to have pursued this at all at this stage.
That all sounds fairly ridiculous to me.
Completely ridiculous when you think of how much money was spent to take the boat off the high seas.
Little's been heard of Laser since she sailed out. We decided to see for ourselves.
Laser Radio's anchored 15 miles off the Essex coast in the Knock Deep Channel, which is where we're going now. This stretch of the North Sea is a long way from the main shipping lanes. The local seafaring folk refer to it simply as Pirate Alley.
Laser's cheekily anchored in the same place she was driven away from 2 years ago. Although she's outside British jurisdiction, under the Marine Broadcasting Offences Act, no one can supply her from Britain without breaking the law. Instead, she gets her food and fuel from a Dutch boat based in France. We boarded her on an unusually calm day for the North Sea. At first glance, she seemed shipshape enough.
Hello, gentlemen. How are you? Hi. Michael Wilson from Thames. Nice to see you. How are you? Thanks.
Her supply of DJs is also strictly prescribed by the law. No British broadcaster can legally work on the boat, so the present team come from the United States. It was the American formula of non-stop pop that won Laser its first astonishing success. The setup's exactly the same this time around. Brandy Lee's allowed a little chat, but not too much. Everything's organised to a strict music format.
Laser Hot Hits. Good afternoon, get up and dance. I am
But while
Brandy,
Brandy
this is
sweetens the listeners, who's behind Laser's latest attempt to rule the airwaves by waiving the rules? Our fellow passenger that day had been Laser's bargain buyer, Ray Anderson. His two-tone jacket is appropriate gear because Mr. Anderson's what's known in the business as an anorak, slang for pirate radio enthusiast. That enthusiasm showed itself when we boarded Laser. He knew the DJs well, and they were keen to talk to him. Below decks, on each cabin door, this notice carried the heading of a Panamanian company. The smaller print reveals the address in homely Frinton-on-Sea. That address belongs to East Anglian Productions, owned by Ray Anderson. Mr. Anderson's business turns out to be selling pirate paraphernalia of every description. Is there a connection between Mr. Anderson and the newly repaired boat?
The vessel sailed on the Sunday morning. I had actually sold the vessel on the Friday before.
Who did you sell it to?
A group of American businessmen.
Right. So you're no longer the owner of...
No.
Of Laser Radio?
No.
Why do the DJs think you're the owner?
I don't think they do. I think they look upon me as being maybe a figure that was involved in the early part. I've met them. Obviously, I've met them when they've come ashore and they've asked to see me, and I've got on rather well with me, and they probably see me as a figure over here that is, you know, worth seeing.
But if you're not the owner anymore, why is the address of the Panamanian company, which purports to run the ship, care of here?
That form was made when I legally owned the vessel. It was put on there as a legal requirement by the Panamanians, and has stayed there. If the new owners decide not to spend money having new forms made, that's their, you know, ball game, not mine.
But you still have a passionate interest in it?
I have an interest in it. I can't say that I have anything other than that, and I don't have any financial interest in it at all. But I wish them well. I believe in what they're doing. I'm supportive of their cause. But as you know, the Marine Offences Act does not allow me to work for them at all.
Mr. Anderson's no doubt an honourable man, and he's right to be wary of any connection with pirate radio, apart from tinkering with its romantic memories. The authorities are not sentimental, and the law's scrutiny of pirate radio offences is strict and wide-ranging. This Friday, 9 people will be charged with criminal conspiracy, dating back to when Laser first flouted the law. Offences range from running Laser's disco roadshow to keeping the ship supplied with food and fuel from the southeast coast. There's no doubt that the authorities are determined to take a hard line. And despite her successful escape to sea, Laser appears to be having little better luck now. We've heard she owes thousands of pounds to her suppliers. On board there's little food, perhaps enough for a few days, and so little fuel that if she were to break loose from her anchor in one of the North Sea's frequent gales, she'd have difficulty in steaming to harbour. The pirate's broadcast power is in little better shape. In the 6 months she's been anchored off Essex, severe gales battered her so much that her aerials eventually smashed to the deck. It'll cost thousands of pounds to repair the damage. So, despite transmitters, which are some of the most powerful in the history of pirate radio, she's limited to a few test transmissions. It's all too trying, even for a DJ's sense of humour. We also heard that the crew had mutinied a few weeks ago because they'd not been paid.
I get paid in a wide variety of ways out here. All the sausages I can eat, the fresh air.
Are you getting dollars?
No.
Dollars come from advertising. Laser's agency is in this central London building. They've tried to tempt advertisers by offering free ads, but they've operated in mysterious ways. This Chiswick car company found Laser had run free ads without telling them. When Laser called to try to get a contract, the company said no. Apart from anything else, it would have been against the law. Undeterred, Laser approached this girly Sunday newspaper and got a similar cold shoulder. For the moment, Laser's effectively scuppered. No programmes, few supplies, and no money. Perhaps it's now time for the pirates to change their tune.
What is a boom area now of broadcasting is for religion, for putting over religious messages, or, you know, these cliques in America that have their own TV stations could be broadcasting into Europe. And I'd have thought the audience, Laser always sold itself as All Europe Radio. I would think that this aspect of it is the one to watch. The idea that the audience will be the youth of Germany, France, Belgium, Holland, and that it could be either political or religious motivation behind it. Certainly not pop music radio.
If religion's to save Laser, faith's in short supply. Paul Jackson is the only DJ left. The other two jumped ship on Saturday, leaving Paul to contemplate the future of the station. What that will be is anyone's guess. There are rumours that mysterious foreign backers are set to bail Laser out of the doldrums of debt, but we've found, like much of pirate radio, that they're best taken with a pinch of salt. But why spoil a good seafaring yarn with the facts of life? Let's say that Laser will probably ride out the troubled waters in some quiet anchorage and reappear on another wavelength, just as she did before. After all, buccaneers were always good for a tall story. It took their mind off the cruel sea.
Tall story and a curious one. I never did know what an anorak was until Michael Wilson discovered all for me. More seriously, yesterday's confirmation of June the 11th as General Election Day